At Westminster Abbey in London, where the recent coronation took place, there is a plaque with these words. Happens to be on a tombstone of an Anglican bishop. When I was young and free, my imagination had no limits. I dreamed of changing the world. As I grew older and wiser, I discovered the world would not change. So I shortened my sights somewhat and decided to change only my country. But it too seemed immovable. As I grew into my twilight years, in one last desperate attempt, I settled for changing only my family, those closest to me. But alas, they would have none of it. And now, as I lay on my deathbed, I suddenly realize if I had only changed myself first, then, by example, I would have changed my family. And from their inspiration and encouragement, I would then have been able to better my country. And who knows, I may even have changed the world. In the scripture reading today, we hear from someone who actually changed the world. Jesus changed the world not with a mighty army, but most often with words. Words that changed people who changed the world. And some of the most important words that Jesus ever uttered are the words we just read. They are the Beatitudes, which come from the Latin word beatus, which means blessed. Each of the 8 Beatitudes begins with the word blessed. And in the space of just a few sentences, Jesus reveals the secrets to leading a blessed life. #blessed. But it's not what you think. The Beatitudes don't mention success or money or status or that holiday in Fiji or any of the things that we normally associate with being blessed. Instead, they speak about attitude. The attitudes of the heart. Your attitude to things like loss and power and mercy and wanting to do the right thing and wanting to keep your heart pure. Now, that's a bold claim, isn't it? Can you really live the blessed life in the midst of terrible circumstances? Like floods and tornadoes and pandemics and high inflation and cancer? Just by adopting certain values? That's what we'll explore today. We look at the essential message of the Beatitudes and whether they live up to their promise. And if they do, how do we adopt these attitudes as our own? But first, what do the Beatitudes actually say? Well, they say some strange things. Take this one. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. No. Surely that should read, blessed are the aggressive. Those who use their power to get their way, for they will inherit the earth. Or take this one. Blessed are the poor in spirit. those who are spiritually dependent, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. No. That should read, blessed are the spiritually full and self-sufficient, like the teachers of ancient Israel, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. And look, what about the contradictions? How do you love mercy, but also hunger and thirst for righteousness? Surely it's mercy or righteousness. Or how can you be blessed? How can you be happy while being persecuted? Does that make sense to you? All this is very strange. The Beatitudes certainly don't read the way you'd expect. And that's because they go against cultural norms. John Stott once wrote that the Beatitudes can be described in just 2 words: Christian counterculture. Christian counterculture. When Jesus spoke the Beatitudes, he was surrounded by 2 dominant cultures: the warrior culture of Rome and the religious culture of Israel. The warrior culture of Rome was all about power and strength and conquest and self-sufficiency. If it's to be, it's up to me. I'm the master of my fate. I'm the captain of my soul. That sounds so true, doesn't it? It's a common attitude in secular New Zealand. A fierce independence and self-reliance that echoes the words of Sinatra. I did it my way. On the other hand, the religious culture of Israel, at first glance, seems closer to the Beatitudes. At least now God is in the picture. The Beatitudes even seem to echo passages from the Old Testament. For example, the Beatitude on mercy is echoed in Micah 6:8. Does anyone know this verse by heart? It's super famous. Nevin, have a go. He has shown you, O mortal, what is good. And what does the Lord require of you but to act justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God? And the beatitude on purity of heart is echoed in Proverbs 22:11. Those who love a pure heart and are gracious in speech will have the king as a friend. But what's different about the religious culture of Israel and the Beatitudes? Israel had become about outward appearance rather than inward substance. Trying to do the right things, but with the wrong attitude. In contrast, the Beatitudes are about right living that flows from right believing, that flows from right seeing. A fully integrated life fueled by a change in attitude. When Jesus speaks the Beatitudes, he is in effect saying, my kingdom, the kingdom of God, is not like the kingdom of Rome. It is not built on external power, but inner power. It's built on a spiritual strength that can only come from God. Jesus is also saying, my kingdom is not like the religious culture of Israel. It's not built on pretending or striving to live a good life, but on becoming a good person who bears good fruit. A person whose life is good because their heart is good. So do the Beatitudes work? How many of you live by the Beatitudes? How many of you try to live by the Beatitudes? The big question is, do the Beatitudes lead to what they promise, which is blessing? Well, immediately after speaking the Beatitudes, Jesus looks at his disciples, the very people he expects to live out these new attitudes. And what does he say to them? You are the salt of the earth. You are the light of the world. In the ancient world, salt was more than a flavor enhancer. It was used as a preservative. It slowed the decay of food. Jesus is saying that those who live out the Beatitudes will be the ones who preserve this world. Not just by injecting goodness into it, but by slowing its decay. What about light? Well, in the ancient world, light was a symbol of wisdom and hope and goodness. Jesus is saying that those who live out the Beatitudes will be the ones who bring wisdom and hope and goodness to a lost and hopeless world. Again, these are bold claims, bold promises. So do those who live out the Beatitudes really change the world for good? Are they really salt and light? In 1888, a young Hindu law student went to London for further study. He was very shy, maybe because of the language barrier. And so he stayed in his room most of the time. But eventually he met some Christians who gave him a Bible and challenged him to read it. So he started with the Old Testament, didn't get far, didn't understand what it was about. But then he got to the Gospel of Matthew. And when he read Matthew 5, 6, and 7, and the words of Jesus washed over him, and he heard the Beatitudes for the first time, it electrified him. He went back to his Christian mates and said, "Wow, guys, this is amazing." They kind of laughed it off and said, "Look, it is amazing, but nobody really lives by that." Well, he did. Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi took the principles of the Beatitudes, went back to his home country, and used those very principles of nonviolence to change the world. Or fast forward half a century to Holt Street Baptist Church in Montgomery, Alabama. Inspired by the example of Gandhi and the words of the Beatitudes, a young black Baptist pastor is fighting institutional racism in a radically new way. Martin Luther King Jr. is determined to fight aggression with meekness and violence with love. Listen to a speech he made that captures the essence of the Beatitudes. Agape love is more than friendship. Agape is understanding creative, redemptive goodwill for all men. It is an overflowing love which seeks nothing in return. Theologians would say that it is the love of God operating in the human heart. And when one rises on to love on this level, he is able to love the person who does the evil deed while hating the deed that the person does. And he is able to love those persons that he even finds it difficult to like, for he begins to look beneath the surface. And he discovers that that individual who may be brutal toward him and who may be prejudiced was taught that way, was a child of his culture. At times his school taught him that way. At times his church taught him that way. At times his family taught him that way. And the thing to do is to change the structure and the evil system so that he can grow and develop as a mature individual devoid of prejudice. And this is the kind of understanding goodwill that the non-violent resistor can follow if he is true to the love ethic. And so he can rise to the point of being able to look into the face of his most violent opponent and say in substance, "Do to us what you will, and we will still love you. We will match your capacity to inflict suffering by our capacity to endure suffering. We will meet your physical force with soul force. And do to us what you will, we will still love you. We cannot, in all good conscience, obey your unjust laws because non-cooperation with evil is as much a moral obligation as is cooperation with good. And so throw us in jail. And as difficult as that is, we will still love you. Bomb our homes and threaten our children. And as difficult as it is, we will still love you. Send your hooded perpetrators and violence into our communities at the midnight hours and drag us out on some wayside road and beat us and leave us half dead, and we will still love you. But be assured that we will wear you down by our capacity to suffer. And one day, we will win our freedom, but we will not only win freedom for ourselves, we will so appeal to your heart and your conscience that we will win you in the process. And our victory will be a double victory. That's the Beatitudes in action. Those who live them out really do change the world. As we draw to a close, what do the Beatitudes mean for you and me? I don't know about you, but I'm no Gandhi or Martin Luther King. But then again, maybe it's not about applying the Beatitudes on a grand global scale, but just applying it to our everyday lives, in our friendships and in our families, in our marriages and in our workplaces, in our church and in our schools. When you're met with aggression, can you turn the other cheek and respond with meekness? When someone offends you, can you overlook that offense and show mercy? Can you become known as a person of integrity, person who loves to do the right thing, even when no one is looking. If what Jesus says is true, then it is the Beatitudes that will bless each of these areas in your life. This heart work is hard. Changing your attitudes from the attitudes of everyone else around you is radically countercultural. But there is no work more important than this. No work more important than healing our attitudes. Henry Thoreau once wrote, "It is something to be able to paint a particular picture or to carve a statue, and so to make a few objects beautiful. But it is far more glorious to carve and paint the very atmosphere and medium through which we look." Are you working on your attitudes? Are you working on how you see power and loss and purity of heart and mercy? But again, I ask the question, what does this look like on an everyday basis? Can you think of someone who actually lives out the Beatitudes? That's when I realized that the Beatitudes are more than just a set of principles to live the blessed life. They are a window into the soul of Jesus. You want to know who lived out the Beatitudes? Look no further than Jesus. He was spiritually dependent on his Father through the Holy Spirit. He mourned and wept. He was meek and merciful. His hunger and thirst for righteousness exceeded his hunger and thirst for food and water. He was pure in heart, a peacemaker who rode into his kingdom not as a conquering general, but as a suffering servant. And it gets even more amazing. Because Jesus is the exact representation of God, the Beatitudes reveal the very soul of God. To put on the Beatitudes is to put on Christ. And it is Christ in you and me who outworks the Beatitudes that bring the blessing. So there you have it. You want to change the world? Begin with your heart. Begin with your attitude. Begin with the strange, countercultural attitudes that are the Beatitudes. Let's pray. Lord Jesus, so many of our fellow Kiwis think that you are an angry and cruel and condemning God. It's so not true. When we look at the Gospels, we see someone who lived out these strange countercultural attitudes. Lord, let it be our mission to represent the real you by living out the real you. Come and change the attitudes of our heart, that all those who see us in our everyday lives would see you. We ask this in Jesus' mighty name. Amen.